Chief Adekunle Falana is the kind of man people talk about in low voices at parties and on the radio. He owns half of Lagos and wears the rest of it like armor, a sharp suit and a colder smile. Women say he is handsome, but the word that always follows is untouchable. 6 wives tried to live with him and left within a month each time, one after another, like a cruel pattern that everyone watched unfold. They could not stand his pride, his need to control every room and every word, or the way he measured love like an account balance. He kept people at arm's length, speaking less and judging more, as if warmth was a currency he could not afford. The mansion was quiet, filled with expensive things that never softened him. Drivers and servants learned to move like shadows, because the house itself seemed to demand obedience. Neighbors whispered theories about what made a man rule his world with an icy fist, and the tabloids turned his private life into gossip that fed the city for weeks. Men envied his power and women feared his stare. Yet beneath the public scorn there was a strange pull to him, a curiosity that made people watch for the next scandal, the next wife, the next failure. Lagos told itself that no woman could change Chief Falana, and that the pattern would never break. That belief settled over his name like dust, until someone unexpected decided to step into his light and refuse to leave. Amara Okeke walked into the party like she owned the room, all bright colors and loud laugh, a bundle of energy that cut through Lagos's polished hush. She was from Enugu, a fashion designer with a sharp tongue and a wardrobe that refused to blend in, and people noticed her at once because she moved with a kind of honest fire that money couldn't buy. The party was one of those glossy Lagos nights where chandeliers reflected on champagne, and Chief Adekunle Falana sat like a statue on a throne of power, his smile practiced, his eyes scanning for the next applause. He was the kind of man everyone had already decided a story about, handsome, rich, and untouchable, and the room trembled a little whenever his name brushed lips. Amara had heard the stories too, but she did not come to be impressed. She came to laugh, to dance, to test the city's rumor machine with a new kind of needle. When she reached the circle where Adekunle stood, she saw the perfect, curated version of a man used to people saying yes. She did not bow. She did not bat her eyes. She teased him, easy and sharp, calling his charm plastic, in a voice that cut through the polite hum. The room went quiet for half a second, then the sound broke, laughter, sharp and surprised, because no one had called him that to his face before. Cameras slid toward them, phones rose, the moment was raw and delicious. Adekunle's face shifted from mild amusement to the first real color it had seen that night, shock, then a quick, practiced laugh meant to restart the mood. But it did not work. The laugh met Amara's steady eyes and something clicked in the crowd. People love a small rebellion, and Amara's words were not mean, just honest, and when she added a little joke about manufactured smiles, the laughter rolled like thunder. For the first time, the untouchable man felt a public sting. He had been humiliated in front of Lagos's best, and the tabloids would have a field day by morning. But under that sting was something unexpected, curiosity. Adekunle was used to nods and nervous smiles, but Amara's boldness was a mirror that did not lie. He watched her walk away toward the bar, heels steady, and he found himself replaying the scene over and over, puzzled in a way he had not allowed himself to be for years. The cameras kept clicking, friends whispered, someone started a video that would spread faster than wildfire. By the time the party ended, the clip of Amara calling him plastic was already making its rounds online, people sharing it with captions full of bravado and challenge. Lagos loved a spectacle, and now it had a new one, the night a small, fierce woman laughed in the face of a giant. The city waited for Adekunle's reaction, but more than that, it waited to see if the man who believed he owned every room would do something different when someone refused to be impressed. Against all odds Amara said yes. Lagos gasped, but she walked into Chief Falana's life like she owned her choice. She did not come to be tamed. She moved into the mansion with suitcases of bold prints and the kind of laughter that woke up rooms. People expected her to leave in 30 days. Instead she began a quiet war that sounded a lot like truth. She answered his clipped orders with sharp comebacks. When he arranged breakfast in silence, she chatted loudly about her designs until his stare loosened. When he made a rule, she broke it with style. At dinner he would try to correct her manners, and she would tell a story from Enugu about stubborn grandmothers who outlived villages. He mocked her at first, and she returned each jab with a smaller, clever one. Their arguments were not whispers. They were public scenes inside a house used to obedience. Staff listened at doors and laughed behind hands. Neighbors leaned closer to gossip. Videos followed. A thrown silk scarf. A remark about his vintage watch. A heated exchange in the home office where she called his speeches hollow and he called her showy. Someone filmed a moment when she walked into a boardroom uninvited and spoke to investors about funding a fashion school. The clip exploded online. People loved her because she did not beg for respect. She took it by speaking up and showing work. Where other wives had folded, she pushed back and used his power to make noise for causes she believed in. That morning when he tried to decide the color of a charity gala dress for her, she painted it bright and wore it anyway. Cameras flashed. The post trended. Each stunt was small at first, but they stacked like a building of proof that she would not vanish. She picked fights with him on purpose sometimes, not to hurt him, but to force him to look. Fans chose sides. Some called her a fool who would be destroyed. More called her a heroine cutting through a man who had grown used to silence and yes. Adekunle felt it too. His control slipped in public as his name began to trend with hers. He tried to punish her with coldness, but she answered with work and a smile that refused to be coached. One night a video went viral of Amara giving a speech in his house about dignity and money, and the two of them arguing on camera while she refused to leave the room. It became a rallying point. People reposted that scene with captions about courage, and the clip drew thousands to her side. Instead of shrinking, their marriage turned into a stage where truth forced change. Inside the mansion, the war taught him to listen and taught her how to use his world as a tool. Outside, the world watched every sharp word and every bold stunt, waiting for the day either she would break or he would finally soften. Neither acted like the stories said they would. Their fight became the thing Lagos could not stop watching. Amara learned quickly that power had many faces. When Adekunle tried to set the rules of their home and their life, she met every rule with a bold answer. He expected a quiet wife who followed his schedule and his choices, but she chose loudness over silence and action over apology. At board meetings where he spoke in flat, practiced phrases, she stood up and asked hard questions about people his company hurt and projects that only padded profits. Executives shifted in their seats and whispers rolled like thunder. He tried to pull her back to the sofa with a look. She ignored the look and kept going. At charity galas where his handlers picked safe themes and soft speeches, Amara changed the script. She wore bright prints, told real stories, and called for real change in a voice that made guests uncomfortable. Cameras loved the contrast. He had spent a lifetime training rooms to obey. She trained them to think. When he tried to silence her in private, she posted a short video of a meeting where she refused to sign a bland plan and instead argued for funding a program for girls. The clip blew up overnight. Headlines called it a diva moment. Women called it bravery. Men argued on social media. Adekunle felt the push of public opinion for the first time as his own name trended with hers. Rather than retreat, he tried harsher control. He sent lists of rules about who she could see and where she could go. She made a rule of her own: she would not hide. At his company dinner, when a manager tried to correct her table manners, she corrected the manager in front of everyone, then introduced young designers from her hometown and told their stories. Investors listened. A video of that night spread with captions calling her the woman who dared to embarrass a billionaire. Each time he raised his voice, she raised hers, but she always aimed her words at ideas and action rather than insults. That made her sharpness feel like purpose. People stopped seeing their marriage as a private drama and started seeing it as a battlefield for change. His attempts to dominate made him lose the stage. Her bold public moves built a following that did not depend on him, and that freedom became a kind of power he had not expected. For the first time in his life someone stood in his way and would not move. He was forced to listen, and listening began to crack the hard shell around him. The manor filled with new noises, laughter that challenged him, applause that did not ask permission, and a stubborn noise of people who would not be shushed. It was chaos to his old order and magic to everyone who watched. Amara thought she knew the man behind the headlines, but she learned the truth slowly, like a secret revealed one small piece at a time. It began with an old photograph she found tucked inside a book on a high shelf, a black and white picture of a thin boy in rough clothes standing beside a stern man with a belt in his hand. The image did not match the public portrait of a confident tycoon. Then a maid let slip a story about a locked room in the house that no one entered, a room with boxes of papers from years before his success. Curiosity pulled at Amara, and she did what she always did when she wanted to understand someone: she asked questions. At first Adekunle deflected with jokes and silence. When she kept asking, the walls of his calm face started to crack. He told her about nights when the house smelled of fear, about a father who used power to break people, about promises to never feel small again. He spoke in short bursts, as if pulling breath was hard work, but every pause carried a memory that looked like pain. Amara listened without pretending to fix everything at once. She learned how his arrogance had grown like a shield. Pride kept him from being hurt, but it also kept him from loving fully. That knowledge changed how she argued. Her sharp words became gentler questions. Her public stunts shifted from show to purpose. She still fought him, but she fought with an eye to reach what hurt inside him, not only to win an argument. One evening she opened a box of letters hidden under a floorboard and read notes from a younger Adekunle asking a friend to teach him how to be brave. Another time she found a crumpled drawing from a child he once was, a house with no windows because the boy had learned to hide. The pieces mapped a life that was smaller and colder than anyone had guessed. Seeing him that way did not erase the ways he hurt others, but it made Amara refuse to meet cold with cold. She began to challenge him to use his power differently by showing him small paths out of his armor. She sat with him in rooms where he had once ruled in silence and asked him to tell a story. When he could not, she started a project that invited him to fund schools in the places he had once passed by without looking. He objected at first. He feared softness. But the work gave him pieces of himself back, quiet ones that did not need applause. When he watched a child at one of the new schools paint a bright house with open windows, something in Adekunle unlearned the habit of shutting people out. Amara did not save him with grand speeches. She unmasked him by staying, by asking, and by refusing to be broken by his walls. In the end, the revelation of his past did not excuse his coldness. It changed the terms of their fight and offered a new kind of power. The power to heal or to be healed. The house that once breathed only command began to breathe in laughter, and Lagos watched as the man who had hidden for so long found small ways to let the light in. Amara did something no one expected, and it started to change everything. She did not leave when things got hard, she stepped closer and put a plan inside his life that could not be ignored. Instead of private fights that ended with silence, she pushed for public work that asked for money and attention, but in a way that hit where his pride lived. She asked him to fund a school in a neighborhood he once sped past, and when he balked she showed him a single child who needed books. She invited women from small towns to a gala and asked Adekunle, in front of cameras, to promise scholarships. He agreed at first with a tight smile, then with more feeling, then finally because he saw headlines and faces that did not let his usual distance hold. Amara made him meet the people his money could help. She led him into classrooms, into clinics, and into meetings with women who had started businesses with less than 100 naira. He was awkward at first. He did not know how to listen without judging. But each time he saw a letter from a student or a photo of a woman opening her small shop, something uncoiled. Amara pushed him to create funds for girls in school, to back female entrepreneurs, and to build libraries where there had been none. She turned his boardroom speeches into promises that were followed by checks, and she turned his private power into public pressure for good. the change did not happen overnight. The tabloids were suspicious, and social media split in two, some people calling it a show and others calling it a turning point. Videos of him visiting a school in worn shoes, of him listening to a young mother explain a loan that would save her household, began to spread. People who had only known his cold smile started to see him stir. Officials who had once kissed his ring now watched him sign documents with his name and a new tone of care. At home he practiced saying simple things like "I am sorry and I did not know," and those sentences were small earthquakes for a man who had built walls out of answers. Amara did not let him off the hook for his past. She held him accountable, but she also made room for action. She turned his wealth into tools for other people, and with each project the myth of the untouchable billionaire lost a piece of its power. Lagos began to talk about Chief Adekunle differently. People still remembered the old stories, but new stories arrived, of scholarships, of a center for women, of a man who could sit quietly while a child read out loud. The image of a proud, frozen ruler slowly softened into something more complicated, and the world watched closely as Amara used courage, not anger, to make the man change his world. They became something no one expected and everything the city could not stop watching. Where 6 wives had wilted, Amara did not bend, she stayed and changed the rules. She did not break him or bow to him. Instead she taught him to listen, to give, and to let other voices into rooms he once closed. The mansion that used to echo with orders began to fill with conversations, with plans for schools, with the laughter of children who had not been seen before. Adekunle did not turn into a saint overnight. He still held his old habits, but slowly the armor around his heart thinned. He learned to apologize in public, to show up at a ribbon cutting without pretending it was for show, and to let credit go to people who earned it. Amara did not take the spotlight to feed her ego. She used it to raise others and she warned him when he slipped back into control. Together they pushed projects that mattered, and social media could not look away. Clips of them arguing then laughing at a school opening trended across feeds. Interviews showed a man who once ruled by fear learning to rule by responsibility. Fans who once mocked him now debated whether the change was real. Critics called it a PR move. Supporters called it a small miracle. Either way their story became a talk of towns and timelines. They walked galas hand in hand, but the hand-holding mattered less than what they did with their influence. Amara opened a foundation for young women, and Adekunle put real money behind it. They used their fame to amplify stories that would otherwise be ignored. In quiet moments they wrestled with old wounds and made new promises that were tougher than any headline. Lagos stopped saying no woman could last with him and started asking what power could look like when it was shared. The new king and queen were messy, stubborn, and real. That mess felt like hope to a city hungry for change, and their reign became a story people passed on with a little shake of the head and a lot of surprised applause.